up this afternoon, though, we'll be speaking in just a moment to some of the team from Motiv8, the charity that offers free and confidential counselling and support for those struggling with various areas of addiction. And Thea Ozenturk, 2018 marks a very important anniversary for the charity, doesn't it?
That's right. Motiv8 celebrated its 40th anniversary on the 18th of September this year. So yes, great year for Motiv8.
And how long have you actually been involved with the charity?
Oh, good heavens. I've just clocked up my 25th year of working for Motiv8, yeah, so I've been around quite a long time.
So you are someone who's absolutely seen the changes and the developments within the organisation.
Well, that's right. I think Motiv8 it's changed from being a small alcohol service. It was the first service of its kind to help people with addictive behaviours on the island, but it's evolved over time. Because the community's needs have changed. So yes, it started off with alcohol, and now we are seeing people with gambling addiction. We're moving into gaming addiction, drug misuse. So yeah, Motiv8's evolved for those reasons.
And we're talking about gaming addiction. We're going to be talking about that more a little bit later on as well, because it's one of those sort of very modern and really quite scary addictions, isn't it?
It is. It's just about to be recognised as an addictive disorder by the World Health Organization. The DSM-6 is the diagnostic criteria that they use to recognise an addictive behaviour, and yet they're going to include gaming in that. So it's an up-and-coming, sadly, part of modern addiction treatment services need to look at, providing services for people, particularly young people who are overwhelmed with their use, can take over their lives. So yeah, we're looking into this.
We're also joined by Joe Yeardsley and also by Louise McColgan, who are all from Motiv8. And the primary aim of this charity is to help anyone impacted by drug, alcohol and gambling problems here on the Isle of Man. They have had over 4 decades of free and confidential service, helping thousands of island residents, offering such things as the family alcohol service, GAM care, and 2 new services that we're going to hear about, focusing on young people. The team are dedicated to helping everyone who's impacted by addictive behaviours, working with all agencies in the wider health and social care field. Now, Thea, we've just been talking about the fact that it is the 40th anniversary. What have been some of the sort of, in your mind, the most important developments over the time, the 20 odd years that you've been involved with the charity?
I think it has stayed true to its core aims and objectives. But yet has managed to evolve, and the core aims and objectives were always about confidentiality, so that people felt that in a small community where you've got lots of stigma and embarrassment, that people could come forward for help. One of the things that surprises a lot of professionals when they come to our service is that we don't have a waiting room. People are seen directly into a counselling room. So confidentiality is so important. So even though we've evolved, we've kept the core principles. So confidentiality, the therapeutic alliance, building good, trusted relationships with our clients so that they feel valued and supported. If people won't come back if you're too professional, you're too professional, if you know what I mean. They want to feel that they're someone that they can identify with. So that's another key factor as well. Just really keeping those core principles going, but evolving in terms of what the community's needs are.
And is it difficult in this sort of day and age with the advent of social media to actually keep that confidentiality aspect?
I think we're better at it than ever. I think we've become even more mindful of it because of the risks that kind of social media poses. So yeah, we certainly don't have anything like that advertised on social media, but we do engage with people via social media. Our recovery hub, which you're going to learn about today, people are invited to get involved with the Recovery Hub. They contact us through the Recovery Hub. They come to all the group work programmes that are on offer there. So yeah, social media today, it does maybe poses some risks, but I think it's made us more mindful of protecting anonymity.
And I should ask then, before we get onto the Recovery Hub, what would you say are some of the sort of main recurring problems that people on the island struggle with in relation to addiction?
Alcohol has always been one of the main drugs. It's our favourite drug, isn't it? It's been around since the dawn of time, and it still remains the one that we see the most referrals for. But we have seen an emergence of people who are misusing cannabis. It's impacting on their mental health and their well-being, and they're just reason to get up in the morning. It can sometimes take away your ability to function. So cannabis, we're seeing cannabis, alcohol, but gambling and gaming are, they're rising up through the ranks as well. As there's nothing like a gambling addiction to sort of remove everything from you, from your livelihood, your relationships, your home, your roof over your head, losing the debts that people can incur. So, there's lots, and we're just seeing as time goes on, this is what Motiv8 tries to do. It tries to keep its ears to the ground, tries to see what the issues are, and we evolve our services accordingly.
And that's the thing, I suppose, as well. The thing you just picked up on there as well is you don't just deal with the individuals who are struggling, do you? You also deal with the families, because these addictions can impact greatly on those in the sort of around that person.
Yes, I should have said that at the beginning when you asked me what was important. It's important that we involve the family, and any family member or significant other can come to us in their own right. They don't have to come as an adjunct to the treatment of somebody else. And we were just saying before that there is some research that suggests that if you work with family members and significant others, that you can for greater change in that family situation, even without seeing the person with the problem, because what you're doing is you're getting them to change how they deal with it and how they cope with it, and that can make a real difference in a situation.
Now, we're also joined by Louise McColgan. Lovely to have you with us, Louise. Thanks for being here. Just tell us a little bit about how you first came to be involved with Motiv8 then, and what your role is in the organisation.
I'm an addiction support worker. I approached Thea back in 2013 to start a smart recovery group programme. And she was more than happy to help me with that. So, yeah, I started with that. We started the Smart Recovery. I then started to volunteer for Motiv8, and it sort of went from there, really.
So what do you mean by Smart Recovery?
Smart Recovery is a support group, an abstinence-based support group for any type of addictive behaviour. It's mutual aid, and it uses tools from CBT. So we meet twice a week. It's peer-led as well, so it's a growing recovery community, so to speak. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the fact that the nature of us being on a tiny island, and as Thea was saying about how confidentiality is so important. As a support worker, though, how do you deal with that? Because you must presumably occasionally happen across people that you may have an association with. That must make it quite difficult.
Yeah, of course, but again, we have to keep the confidentiality, and we stress that at the beginning of the sessions as well, so we keep that.
If we know anybody, we'll always declare it, and give people an option of seeing another counsellor.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And Jo Yeardsley is also joined by you today. Just tell us a little bit about what your role is in Motiv8. I know we've spoken to you before, but tell us again.
I'm a young person's addiction professional. So basically, one of our new services that we're just launching at the moment is a young person service, so 18 downwards, basically, for anybody that is using drugs of any kind, and also those people that, like Thea was saying earlier, those people around them that are influenced, obviously, by the drug taking of any kind. So we're working with I'm working with young people from anything. I think the youngest at the moment that I'm working with is 13.
Wow.
So and these it changes, it varies. It tends to vary on the island, who's using what and what age, and your age appears to be dependent on what you're using. So it appears that when you're around the age of about 11, you begin with kind of profuse tobacco use, or you can do, which by the time you're 13 has moved in tobacco and cannabis use. So now there's a polydrug use problem, so there's more than one drug use. So now that's a bigger issue. So when you mix two different drugs together, the risk is higher, and it seems that from about 12 to 13, that's what's happening. Young people are not just using one drug anymore, they're using more than one drug. So if you get a stimulant and a depressant drug used together, there's a yo-yo effect on the heart, and it really becomes quite serious. It slows, the heart gets slowed down and speeded up, and these things are a problem, especially when the person is so young. So so and then when you move up to 14 and 15 and 16, then you in some cases there's a move to cocaine use and MDMA and ecstasy use, and these things, when young people are particularly doing these things uninformed, the risk is very high. The way we work is we work collaboratively with the young person, not confrontationally. You don't really get anywhere with confrontation in a young person. But if you can build a relationship of trust and a therapeutic alliance between you, and, because in some cases, you are the only adult that young person has ever trusted sometimes. So you have to use that really carefully, and you have to support the young person through that really difficult time. That, we're not born taking drugs. Something's happened, or some things have happened, and so it's about dealing with the young person holistically. So there's comorbidity, there's lots of things going on there. There's not just drug use, and at Motiv8, that's what we do with all of our clients. We holistically look at what's going on, so we will support all areas of the young person's life as much as we can. And we will also see the young person in places that work for them. Like if the home is a place that's comfortable for them to be seen, then we'll go there. But if it's not, we will see them in school, or we will see them somewhere else, or they can come to the office. So it's really very much about what works for them. And there are one-on-one. It is a one-on-one. So if the person, as the person builds that young person builds that relationship of trust, you then are able to help them and support them in the way that they need. We follow the Fraser guidelines also, which means that we don't need parental consent to see the young person. If the young person is compass mentis enough to appreciate and understand who we are and what we do, we will then see that young person. And we also have a hub on a Tuesday evening from 3:30 till 5, or late afternoon. After school is only in Douglas at the moment, just on Finch Road. And the idea of that is a very kind of relaxed environment where young people can come and they can have a go at the interactive things that we have there. Like we'll have remote control cars and beer goggles, and we'll get them to drive those so that they can appreciate that under the influence of drugs and alcohol, when you sit behind a wheel and you think you can manage to do this, you actually can't, and this is what's happening. And so when you catch them when they're not doing those things, and you explain to them, this is what can happen to you, the message can get across, because you've got to make it real life when you're talking with them about things, because otherwise there's a disconnection and they just don't get it. So yeah, obviously, like Thea has said, we're a confidential service even for young people, unless they are at harm or risk of any kind, or somebody else is. And then we make it very clear to them that we would have to notify the appropriate service.
And there's a few things, there's quite a lot you said in there, which is fascinating in itself. But I want to pick up on something you mentioned, which relates to something Thea said as well about the family support, because you were saying quite often your team may be the first that these young people have trusted. That must be so difficult for parents to find out that their children weren't able to speak to them about this.
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
Quite often the parents won't know, because as I say, the Fraser guidelines allows young people the opportunity to speak to us in confidence. So parents won't know, but hopefully it will mean that the young person will make significant changes and reduce the harm to themselves and make sensible decisions.
Yeah. And when the parents do, if and when they should find out, it is complicated and difficult, and that does happen. Again, as you have this relationship with the young person, it's about working on a relationship with the parents. So not coming across as if you know more about their child than they do, or you're making a judgment on their parenting, because that's not the work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued as well to find out, Thea, I'm going to come to you about this one, the sort of figures that we're talking about here, because 13 is so young. What do we know what figures on the Isle of Man are for people of that age who are dealing with addiction?
I think we know from the Director of Public Health report that was published last year that about 4,000 people on the island have admitted to using illicit substances, mostly cannabis. We used to take part in the surveys, European School Survey Project on alcohol and drugs, up until a few years ago. We used to take part in those every 4 years. Every 4 years. And the island didn't fare well, you know. They were like league tables, and we were kind of not doing really well in those tables, particularly for our drinking. But what's happening in the UK, though, is that drug misuse is going up amongst young people as alcohol has come down. And there's been quite an increase and quite a lot of concern about why that might be happening. So
and we see the same here
yeah.
too. That's
so
what's happening
what's presenting at our services probably the same. When we started an adult drug service in 2011, 11 or 12, it's around that time anyway. We were surprised to see the figures as high as they were, and they continue to rise. So you could argue that some drug use is becoming normalised in certain age groups, you know, particularly cannabis, you know, and then progressing on to other drugs as well. Doesn't happen for all young people, by the way. Most young people will come through that stage, and
because for some people it's a for some young people it's a rite of passage. We do have to appreciate and understand that some of our young people are going to do this. So when this happens, when somebody presents like that, and we have a young person and this is just what they're going to do, then we kick in with harm reduction techniques, because at the end of the day, if you know, it's not always about abstinence for the young person, even though that's what we'd really like. It's about keeping them safe.
We're speaking this afternoon to the CEO of Motiv8, Thea Ozenturk, is with us. Also, we've got Joe Yeardsley with us, and also Louise McColgan from the service as well. Fascinating conversation with them this afternoon, so we're going to continue that now. We've just been talking, Joe, about the various things that young people can get wrapped up in, the different addictions, the different challenges they have. And there may be some parents listening who are concerned that perhaps their children may be sort of involved in something illicit in some way, shape or form. What are some of the sort of signs and indicators that they can look out for?
Okay, so we have to be really careful here, because teenagers can do all of these things and they're just simply being teenagers. But some of the signs and symptoms, withdrawal is a big one. When they're withdrawing from some friends that they are usually with, new friendship groups sometimes also, spending a lot of time in their room, their mood change, larger mood swings than a teenager would have. They're sort of, if you have a relationship where you're very, very open with one another, parents and child, and the young person spends a lot of time talking with you, and that's beginning to stop or is changing and being something different, and you're feeling a distance between you that you wouldn't normally feel. Also, if they are not engaging or not as enthusiastic about sporting activities, if they're not as enthusiastic about school, and they're one of these young people that enjoy school, it's not for everybody, but some young people do. All of a sudden, they're not enjoying those things. They're not associating with wider family members, and friendship group changes.
Again, that is difficult though, isn't it? Because I know you've already picked up on the fact that, you know, there is that sort of gauge of, are they just being teenagers? Because of course hormones as well kick in at that time, and so could it not just be that?
Well, exactly. It's the prolonging, you know, when hormones kick in, you have a period of time with your young person that is just complicated. And then we usually sink back into where they were before for a little while. So it's up and down. This is when there's a spiral downwards, all of it, and it's constant. And then they're irritable. They can be more aggressive than they normally are. They're very tired all of the time. Their look changes as well. They can be quite sallow or almost grey looking. And then, of course, when it's kind of profuse drug use and there's some sort of withdrawal type things, you've got dilated pupils, you've got redness around the eyes, you've got upset tummies, very possible vomiting, chest pains, headaches all of the time, dizziness, paranoia and aggression. Then when you go to the absolute extreme, smashing up their bedroom or getting into fights all the time.
So
with
there's
other
the more
people.
obvious sort of physical aspects of it, I suppose. But if you are noticing these things then and you are concerned, what should be the next step of the family member?
Yes, most definitely to get in touch with Motiv8 as an organisation to run those things by us. So call us. Just call us, email us, Facebook us. We have a young person's Facebook page, or we have Motiv8 Facebook page. Just contact us in any way you know how, and we can support you from then on in.
And we're talking a lot, as we mentioned, about sort of young people and their struggles at the moment. Louise, tell us about these new initiatives then, because we've got YP at Motiv8 and we've also got the Recovery Hub. Tell us a little bit about these and how they are helping.
Well, the Recovery Hub is a facility we've got in Douglas, and we run a group work programme from there. We were lucky enough earlier on this year to be awarded some funding from the Manx Lottery Trust to start these groups. The groups are designed for anybody with an addictive behaviour, whether it's drugs, alcohol or gambling, to learn new life skills, because an addiction can be quite isolating and you forget to look after yourself properly, or these basic needs aren't being met. So these groups are sort of designed to help build those up, because even in recovery from addiction can be quite isolating as well, because you're trying to find like-minded people and things like that. So the groups are designed to help with that. So we do anxiety management, we do relapse prevention, we do like an introduction to mindfulness and nutrition, depression, just a big wide range of different skills that people can learn. And also it's just a nice place for people to meet people as well, and we're starting to build up like a recovery community. People are making friends and things like that, so it's a good programme, yeah.
And what sort of, if my microphone would help, what sort of effects are you actually seeing so far from this? Because it's been ongoing since, is it April, I think it sort of started?
Yeah, it's been running since April, yeah. We have been seeing, people getting together, just a nice little recovery community meeting. We do 2 groups a week, and then plus the 2 smart groups as well. So we're getting a quite nice little community together down there, yeah.
And it's wonderful work, this year, that's going on, and thank goodness it is available to us as an island. And Louise mentioned there funding from the lottery. How else is Motiv8 funded?
Primary funding comes from the Isle of Man Government. We're a contracted agency through the Department of Health and Social Care through Mental Health Services. That's where we get our primary funding from. But we get a lot of funding from the gambling industry for our gambling and gaming services. And also I spend a lot of my time now writing business cases in order to generate funds for the service, because we couldn't survive if we didn't have external funds. So we've got, I think since 2002, we've had close to £750,000 from business cases and grants that we've applied for. So we've done really well. We're not a popular charity, you see, when it comes to charitable giving. People think of addiction and they think it's self-inflicted, and they forget that there's always a backstory, there's always a trauma, there's been a loss, a bereavement, there's been something. And people forget that, So as I say, we're not popular, so we have to make ourselves popular and get people to connect with the people that we help through our service, and that there are children often that are impacted as well. People forget that there are families and there are children. So that's why Motiv8's very holistic and supports anyone impacted by
There are some would pick up on obviously the mention of the fact that the gaming and gambling industry do put money in to support the charity, and there are people who would say if they weren't around they wouldn't need to support the charity in the first place. How would you counter that sort of argument?
Well, this is the society that we live in today. We all indulge in things perhaps that we shouldn't indulge in. I'm not going back to the Sainsbury's comment here.
What's in your basket?
But it'd be great if our society was trouble-free and nobody was addicted to anything, but it's not, is it? For most of us, what starts as a harmless pleasure can become a compulsion. And the majority of people gamble in a safe and responsible way. The majority of people drink in a responsible way. Quite a lot of people will use illicit substances and not run into difficulties with them. But for some of us, some people can't. So, we do need services like Motiv8 to be here to pick up the pieces for the few that have problems with them.
Is it as simple to say, and this might be ignorant, but I'm just going to throw it out there, is it as simple enough to say that some of us are born with addictive personalities, and so whereas some may be able to have something to drink and then put it down, others just can't stop?
It's a huge debate. Is there an addictive gene? You know, it's a huge. We could fill a couple of programs with it. You know. I'll tell you what. An easy way to respond to that would be to talk about a lot of the more recent theories about addiction, or about what happens in the brain, and the changes that happen in the brain when you take enough of a substance or indulge in enough of a behaviour, and you grow networks in your brain, essentially like ivy. If you do something often enough, it will proliferate everywhere and take over. And that, to me, explains addiction far better than thinking that it's something that you're born with it, that, you know, you're predestined to it. I think it's like anything else. If you do something enough, it will, you know, get a hold of you.
Because I guess if you have that sort of attitude that you're born with it, you probably pretty much give up before you start, wouldn't you? Because you think, well, it's in my genes. So
some addictive theories around addiction talk like that, you know, that it's biological, you haven't got a chance, it's there, you're destined, you're doomed for the rest of your life. And actually, we don't believe that. We believe it's a choice, and we believe that people can make responsible choices that can change their lives.
It's also kind of better to say that, you know, sometimes maybe we have personality traits that lean more towards addiction. That's a much better way to look at it. Maybe, possibly that could be the case, but that doesn't mean they can't be worked with and changed.
Because there are some as well, I suppose, that would say, oh, you know, my father or my mother or someone else had that sort of problem, so therefore am I more likely to?
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
That means we would all have that then, because there's hardly anyone that hasn't been touched by somebody in their family who's had an issue. You know, there's always great Uncle Ralph or great Auntie Frida. You know, there's always somebody in someone's family. So, you know, we would all be like that if that was the reason.
Now, coming back to something that we mentioned, this sort of very modern sort of addiction and challenge for young people. Problems highlighted in the news that 20% of young people on the island now spend over 3 hours a day, 3 hours a day playing video games. That cannot be terribly good for them.
No, and that is a worrying development, I think. And that's why we're trying to get to grips with this new emerging concern that we have about gaming. Because that's a whole load of your young person's childhood missing. So when we were young and we were able to go out and play and, you know, be out in the parks, in out in the fresh air, socialising, you're now finding a whole swathe of young people locked in their bedrooms, essentially. And the parents in today's modern world think, oh, it's great, I know where they are, they're safe. However, are they? Because you're letting the whole world into your bedroom. Whilst, you know, that your young person's playing a game, you don't know who they could be interacting with. Because these aren't isolating games. These are communities online. And you could be a whole load of strangers, who knows who they are, interacting with your child, with your young person in their bedroom. And there has been a link made between child sexual exploitation, grooming, with these particular types of video games.
And this is the thing, you know, one of the games that we talk about all the time on the programme, because it seems to be the new big thing, is Fortnite. And again, you talk about the community. Joe, we were talking about this a minute ago. It's one of those games, I think, isn't it, where when the children play it, they feel a sort of real duty to carry on with it for whatever reason, which again sort of promotes the nature of it being addictive because of the very way that it's constructed as a game.
Yes, because you have to spend a certain amount of time before you can achieve a certain amount of things that you have to achieve. So, and you have to reach certain levels, and it's all about the level you're at. So you'll go back to school and you'll discuss, I'm on this level, I'm at this level, you know. And if you're not where everybody else is, there's a kind of pressure for you to go and spend more than 3 hours achieving that.
Yeah, and interesting, I did find a piece online about this from over the weekend, because there's the rise of esports now, which can't be helping. It's become a huge thing, esports. So many people getting involved with it, winning an awful lot of money in these competitions. And Fortnite is now actually being praised as being a great industry for women to get into and be able to excel. So in a way, they've sort of, the gamers in a way are turning it on its head, aren't they? And saying, oh, well, women can't do necessarily well in all these other industries, but in games, women can really excel. And you've got this, there's a gamer called Kitty Plays who says, young girls can look at someone like me and say, she got third at Pro-Am, that's so cool, I want to be like her when I grow up. And she says that she thinks that there's going to be lots more women in the next 3 to 5 years who are now 13 to 17 getting into that scene and pursuing it as a career. And that, again, from what you're saying, Thea, it's a dangerous place to be in the sort of gaming world. And you have to practice to get good at something. So these young girls and boys are going to be thinking, well, I've got to be online all this time because if I want to be good at it and I can make a career at it, how on earth do you challenge something like that?
I think it sounds quite a lot like sophisticated marketing ploys, really, in order to, because that's a huge market, isn't it, for women to be involved in their product, whoever's producing these types of games. I think we just have to counter messages about how women can excel in every field, and especially in fields where where they can contribute and really make a difference in society. So I think most of us will see through that as quite a marketing stratagem by the companies.
We might, because we're a bit older, but I don't know if the sort of 12 and 13 or so. But Louise, again, sort of it's one of those things now, not just simply the dangers of being online, but gaming is now potentially being seen as something that young people could be referred to the NHS even as a result of it, because it is really affecting them, isn't there? Is it something that you see at the hub at all, people coming in with this sort of thing?
Well, Joe's more the young person at the hub. My role at the hub is the group work programme, so I don't know whether Joe would like to answer that.
Have you seen anyone coming to you yet with sort of issues with gaming, or is it still quite sort of new in the field?
We have, but they've often been what you find in a service that crosses over into all types of addictive behaviours. We've got adults, young adults who are 18, and they may have a cannabis addiction, but at the same time they've also got a gaming addiction, so that's really common. So yeah, you're seeing comorbidity, people with multiple issues, different substances, different addictive behaviours. It's very unusual to have somebody that comes to you with one issue nowadays. You're having people that are coming to you and they have several issues. They may be gambling too much, they're drinking too much, they're taking too much cocaine, there's weekend binging. There's, it's very rare to have a person with a singular issue, and that's where we're seeing gaming addiction coming into the service with young adults.
And then, of course, all this can potentially lead to crime as well, which is a whole extra thing. And one of the things I think you are very keen on as well is education. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. It is just coming to 10 minutes to 3 now on the programme. We're joined by the team from Motiv8 this afternoon. And Sarah, we've had a text message in.
We have. David H. on the text asks, whatever happened to self-discipline? What would you say to that, Thea?
Oh, in an ideal world, eh? Well, people's lives are different and complex, and some people's lives aren't great. They have a lot to deal with, and sometimes a substance or indulging in some sort of a behaviour that isn't good for you sometimes feels like the only option. If you're struggling with trauma and you just don't want to think about it for a few hours, then you can see how substance might fit the bill for you. So yeah, in an ideal world, yes, self-discipline, but for some people they need a bit of help to get to that point.
Understandable, yeah. And Joe, one of the things that I know Motiv8 are really keen on is this element of education in what you do. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we don't roll out education. The statistics tell us that doesn't work. But what we do is we have targeted at-risk groups that we work with. So we'll have a group of young people, for instance, that professionals have become aware of, have been using, say, for instance, ecstasy or MDMA, and we will have, for instance, 9, 10, 11 young people, and then I will go into the school or wherever is convenient, and I will talk in a relaxed, kind of open situation where, again, there's interaction there, and I will interactive things to use, and I will talk to them, and actually we'll talk about harm reduction, because as I've said earlier, sometimes our young people are just going to do this, and if they are, we want to keep them as safe as we can. The idea is abstinence, obviously, because on the developing brain, drug use on the developing brain is not great and can have impact later on in life. So yeah, that's what we do. We'll do targeted pieces of education wherever it's needed.
And today also we've been talking about these new services, YP at Motiv8 and the Recovery Hub. Louise, if someone's listening and they think that they might benefit in some way, or family members might benefit in some way from the hub, how do they sort of get involved, or how can they make use of the service?
Yeah, well, they can either give us a call at Motiv8 and we can tell them what groups are coming up, and they can reserve the place there. With regards to the Smart Recovery, you can just come into that. We run that twice a week. That's on a Wednesday evening at 6:30 or a Friday lunchtime at 12:30. They're both an hour and a half each, though, so you can just come to those. There's a Facebook page as well, which is Motiv8's Recovery Hub. The group timetable's on there as well. You can message us if you'd like to attend any of those groups as well. So they're twice a week as well. They're a Monday morning and a Thursday afternoon. Again, both an hour and a half each. Yeah, so
excellent. And Thea, just let people know in general how they can get in touch with Motiv8 if they want to make use of the general services.
Okay, well, first of all, our phone number is 627 656. That's the general number that will reach all of our services. We've got a website, which is all the W's, Motiv8, that's Motiv8 with an 8.im. You can email us at motiv8@iom.com. We're in the phone book. You'll find us on a Google search. Please get in touch.